We are in a generation where technology has surrounded us from all sides. Our everyday life runs on the use of technology, be it in the form of an alarm clock or TV set. Technology is an important part of our daily lives. Even in the hospital, we use technology to diagnose and to treat disease. All our daily life activities such as banking, shopping, entertainment, praying, and communication can be done using digital platforms just by a simple click.
Technology has facilitated teaching and learning because now we can make researches on our phones, laptops, and many others. But before all these facilities, how were we able to do researches and learn?
In the early 90s, there was no internet, so to do researches, you go to the library and read books, something which is not very common among youth today.
But before all these libraries and books, how did people learn? Did they just sit down and say, now there's nothing to do, so we should just wait? No. There must be a main source of information around us. Something to teach us and tell us what to do. That time, the main source of information were old people. Why? Because they're the ones that experienced the most events. They're the ones that have seen the most things, touched everything, smelled, heard the most things. They're the ones that have gathered the most information about life and about existence.
All this sensory information and data they had, they didn't have a memory card nor a USB. Instead, what they used to store all these information were their memories in their brains.
Memory is the act of collecting information around us, processing it, storing it, and later recalling it after some time or years later. In many ways, memory tells us who we are, what we are, the stories we tell ourselves about what we have done with our life.
Like what we have touched, seen, and who we touched. It tells us to whom we are connected to.
So memories are crucial to the essence of our nature as human beings.
Even though as we age our memory declines, it is not the aging process that declines our memory. The memory loss in older people is because they exercise less their brains by staying in one area almost the whole time. Whereas young people roam around talking, playing, dancing, going for parties, and even entertain themselves. So older people staying in one area makes their memory to weaken, just like their muscles and body weaken.
It is a natural process for the old to weaken because
even the storage devices we use can fade off, get broken, misplaced. Our books we use can tear off, get burnt, corrode, eaten up by insects or rats.
It is in the same process our memory
can be hindered by violent shock on the head, accidents.
Our memory can get weaker when we don't take good care of it or exercise it. Having a good memory is a helpful asset in our daily routine, our job site, our
social life, emotional life, spiritual life, and more importantly, in our studies or learning process.
For your memory to improve, you need to train it like a muscle
in your body so that it can become stronger, which is important because Nishan Butler once said, your learning ability decides your earning capacity. If you learn faster, you can go from underpaid to overpaid, which is a very good advantage over others.
Before talking about memorizing or even how to improve your memory, let us first understand how memory works using real-life experiences.
Unlike a computer where informations are stored in the forms of zeros and ones in a concrete form, memory is not a unity function or set of processes.
Information in your brain are on different neurons and they tie together to give you memory, a little bit like resembling a puzzle together. So
memory is more about connections, relationships, and pattern formed by connection of neurons.
Memory is also reconstructive because every time you modify it is different from last time. When you're actually recalling a memory, what you're doing is that you're actually remembering the last time you recalled that memory. So due to your emotions at that moment or due to your environment, the memory will be modified.
When neurons fire together often, their connections become stronger, making them more likely to be fired together again or to be recalled.
Memory reflects a number of distinct cognitive abilities that can be categorized along a different number of dimensions. For example, memory is characterized based on the time elapsed between the presentation and the recall. From there, we can have either the short-term memory or the long-term memory. It is characterized by the nature of the information to be remembered, the demands required, and the cognitive process that underlies the demands. Phonologically similar words like
P, T, C, V, B, G are more difficult to recall than the similar ones like K, W, Y, R, Z, Q.
Information we collect every day becomes memory through encoding, retention, and retrieval.
Take a look at this number. We are going to test for how long we can remember it in some few moments to come. Memory can be classified due to the fact that it can be disrupted by events at approximately the time of encoding. This disruption is called
Interference. There are two types of interferences. We have the proactive and the retroactive interference. Retroactive interference is the effect that new learning has on the ability to recall previously learned things. Let's break it down with an example. A student studying several chapters for an exam will most likely remember
the most recent chapters than the previous chapters because these recent memories will interfere with the past memories.
And it is more common when the new informations are similar to the previous informations. That's what creates much of the interference. Let us take an example on a case where you leave your house, you live in a new address. You staying in this new address for long will like make you
sometimes have difficulties in remembering where you first lived.
Then we have proactive interference, where information present in an earlier time interferes with one's ability to recall new information. There you have difficulties in recalling the new ones because you spend your time recalling the old ones, and the old ones in your mind just prevent you from getting new ones. For example, you have a new password. What happens is that each time you want to log in, you put on old password before remembering that, oh no, I changed password last time.
And proactive interference is mostly common with events that are similar. Let us use this example. Imagine you are presented 5 lists to memorize. After memorizing the first list, you have difficulties in memorizing the second, the third, because as you go, you will be trying to keep the memory of the first list, making you difficult to assimilate the second, the third, fourth list.
So you can see that due to this, if you have two similar subjects in your studying session, there are two things. Either you are more likely to remember the subject you studied lastly, or studying the first subject will make your brain to stick onto it and make it difficult to assimilate the second subject.
And due to this, your brain will be struggling to make the difference between the two concepts. So you can restructure and organize your notes in a specific pattern to ease your understanding.
That is why sometimes studying two completely different subjects might be helpful. Coming back to the figure I showed you, if you're able to remember it, it means your brain successfully encoded in your short-term memory, where your brain kept on repeating it over and over, even without you knowing it. But if you cannot remember it, then you might surely dislike my video. So, how does your short-term memory work?
Neurons in your brain can be modified by intense activity and high-frequency stimulation of neurons called potentiation.
When you receive information, neurons in your brain are constantly fired, and some neurons will continue showing increased responsiveness even after the stimulus has been ceased, and this is known as Posttetanic potentiation.
PTP causes neurons to remain active for some time after activation, making you remember the information.
Another way for a short-term memory is to use a feedback loop,
where information in a closed loop causes neurons to excite each other in a system known as
reverberatory circuits. For example,
when we just read a chapter, the loop of information is still intact in your brain and your PTP too. So
at that moment, you feel like you know everything because those information are still circulating in your neurons inside that feedback loop. So you feel like you know everything. You're like, oh man, I know this chapter. I know everything in this chapter. I'm ready for any exam. Ask me the question about this chapter, I'm going to answer. But when the loop is broken, you feel like you don't more remember anything. You're like, oh, I read that chapter. Oh, I'm quite sure I understood that chapter. What's happening? Is it that I have a short-term memory? No. All of that is just because it didn't enter your long-term memory. So how does your long-term memory work?
First of all, the ability your brain has to encode information permanently for long is called long-term potentiation, LTP.
LTP, like PTP, requires multiple activation of neurons, but LTP is obviously more powerful than PTP. Unlike PTP, which activation is just in a single pattern, LTP requires multiple inputs on the same neuron.
For example, when you take a chapter in your book, don't read each sentence word by word every time, and each time you are paraphrasing it in your mind. But instead,
you can reflect on different ways you can formulate it, different possibilities. You can share it, not necessarily teach it, but just talk about it, include it in your jokes. But don't say something like, hey mom, I have a reverberatory circuit in my brain. Ah no, that's scary. LTP also activates a gene, which is a transcription factor involved in learning and memory,
called cyclic-Adenosin monophosphate response binding element protein, CREB. Not this CREB, I mean CREB. CREB activates proteins called neutrophils, which increase neurons' responsiveness and their growth, which is essential for long-term memory.
Once you have your long-term memory established, when reading your notes, for example, you can relate the new things you're learning with the existing ones or with the old memories,
so that you should be more likely to recall it. For example, you can see a kid riding a bicycle. When the kid falls, you say it comes to your mind and you say, I can remember when I was a kid, I used to fall on a bicycle too. So later when you be asked, did that kid fall on a bicycle?
you'll be like, oh yeah, he fell on the bicycle. How are you able to remember it? You are able to easily and accurately remember that one because
seeing that kid falling on the bicycle, and at that moment you related to your old memories or the long-term memory you already had, it makes you to access the new memories more easily. To improve your memory, try to increase your concentration, stay away from distraction, and focus your attentions on things you want to learn or things that are useful for you.
your brain uses the rule of the use it or lose it principle, which means when you learn something, if you don't use it, you are going to forget it. So it's better when you learn something, when you have something new, you try and put it in your agenda, you try and implement what you have learned so that it should be part of you.
And one of the most important things for your memory too is sleep, relax, at least there will be helped. Hope you enjoyed the first part of this video about memory.
We have seen the different ways in which you can improve your memory. Hope this video was helpful to you, and thanks for watching this video.
If you want more content like this, don't forget to like, share, subscribe so it can encourage me to make more videos like this.